one of the teams that the team I feel made a considerable amount of progress in 2022. Definitely started out in a shit box. Made progress throughout. Definitely, Lewis paid some heavy dividends in trying to do and help for the car development. What do you see going forward next season for not only car development for Mercedes, but the potential contract for Lewis? And if so, what do you see that line being, that horizon being for Lewis? But first, the car development. Do you even expect the W14 or whatever they're going to call it to be in the similar or even same form as this season? And if not, what do you think will happen?
Mercedes absolutely started the season on the back foot. And it was so much of the case that not only did they have a major problem that they had identified right away, they're saying, hey, this porpoising problem is an issue. It's holding us back in terms of performance. Not only did they have that problem, but they remedied that to a great degree in Spain. And then they got to Baku the week later or 2 weeks later and realized they had a totally separate problem, this bouncing problem and bottoming problem that was actually totally distinct from the porpoising problem that was also costing them performance, and potentially Lewis Hamilton is back. Right. And this is one of those things where I think Mike Elliott described it as they were just peeling back layers of an onion. They just kept going and kept going. And every time they pulled something back, there was something else. And there was so many things that they had no idea about. And these are all symptoms of to use an inelegant term, an undercooked concept. Okay. Right. There was a very ambitious idea about how to attack the 2022 regulations. There was limited resources. In fact, the most limited resources of any team, because they won the 2021 Constructors' Championship. They had less CFD items, less wind tunnel man hours available to develop an already ambitious concept. You could argue one of the things they could have done would have been to just back off a little bit on the ambition of the design concept, precisely because you don't have extra resources. You don't even have resources that are on a par with everyone else. You actually have less resources than everyone else. So it's two things happening together. You have less resources than everyone else, and your concept is arguably more ambitious than anyone else. I would argue that it was. And they almost made it work. They almost made it work. But the important thing is, as you said, they developed that car so much over the course of the season, and there are certain aspects of the design that are immutable, that can't be changed, and they were still able to work around those and still build performance. What was impressive to me about that is Ferrari was winning races right out of the box. Right out of the box, they were competitive with Red Bull. But as the season went on, it wasn't just driver errors. It wasn't just reliability. It wasn't just poor strategy calls that was throwing away wins for them.
Right.
Towards the second half of the season, they were actually lacking race pace. They had great qualifying pace. They were always there in qualifying. But they didn't have the race pace. But Mercedes actually did, on average. I mean, Abu Dhabi is a little bit an outlier towards the end of the season, but on average, on the second half of the season, the team that was actually fighting Red Bull wasn't Ferrari. It was Mercedes. And we know that the Red Bull car had gotten faster over the course of the season.
Right.
It was overweight. It was probably the most overweight car of any car on day one of the season. And they were finally getting down towards the weight limit towards the end of the season. And that combined with whatever effects of technical directive 39 and the aerodynamic oscillation metric, the AOM metric to try to stop the porpoising, those things together just made Red Bull incredibly fast and Ferrari not nearly as fast.
No.
And the only team that was actually able to take it to Red Bull towards the end of the season was Mercedes. So I would argue that Mercedes being able to fight a latter half of the season Red Bull is actually more impressive than a Ferrari that could fight an early half of the season Red Bull. Because that second half of the season Red Bull is way faster.
Yeah, good point.
It's way faster. So I think that not only is Mercedes in a situation where they have the absolute pace to be able to compete, but the level that they were competing at is actually represents a faster car than what Ferrari started the season at. And I don't want to say that Ferrari flattered to deceive, so to speak, but part of Ferrari's competitiveness owes to Red Bull itself and them struggling to get on their own feet. As I said before, car was overweight. They had reliability problems in the first couple of races, and then they really started to come together towards the latter half. So in terms of car development, yes, Mercedes is probably going to be in a very strong place. Not only did they learn critical information about the design direction of the new car, but equally important, if not more important, they learned how to find that information. They learned how to find information when they are totally lost.
Right.
And they've never been more lost in the last 10 years than they were now. Even when they weren't winning.
Right.
Even when they weren't winning in 2010 and in 2011 or whatever, I think they still had a better feel for what was going on than just being totally flabbergasted at the beginning of the season. So Mercedes is an incredibly strong team. There's a reason why they're 8 times champions and all the rest, and I think they'll come back strong.
Thanks for watching another episode of Wolfpack Performance. Don't forget to check out some of my other content on Formula One and motorsports topics. Like, share, subscribe, and we go live on the weekends. See you soon.